co-hosting today. I'm Stephanie Bell. We've got John Marsh, Brian Hauswirth, and producer Hannah with us. But I'm flabbergasted by seeing the pictures, whole homes floating down the river.
116 people now dead. That's the latest count.
Gosh. And the number's just going to go up. It's terrifying. And they say, I saw lots of people saying there were some small colleges there in North Carolina and in other places. And they said, look, most of these places are now only accessible by air. People are, standing on their roofs trying. There's no hope to get these people out unless they can get, some sort of like helicopter to these folks. And I suspect we're going to see those numbers increase today, John. What do you say?
Task Force 1 just deployed additional personnel over the weekend. We understand that they are now based right there around Asheville, North Carolina, which is a big tourist trap area.
Thank goodness that we are sending resources, but that question went to Biden. What are you doing? And Kamala, and apparently they spent all weekend campaigning. My understanding is that Trump has been donating money and it plans to visit and try to do what he can, but it seems like our leaders are just absent on this front. We will be talking to Gale Blomenkamp at 8:35 about the efforts of Missouri Task Force 1. We will also, as we do every morning, every Monday morning, talking to Scott Faughn. I'm sure
Thank goodness it's not every morning.
That's for sure. But I'm sure since I was gone last week, we're going to talk about football and how you pronounce the state and some other things. But no, I know there's been some updates in the Senate race here in Missouri, and I think Scott's got some thoughts on that. And of course, I saw he went to a big event this weekend. He was all dressed up with Casey Burns, who will be joining us as a guest co-host tomorrow. They went to Jefferson City's Oktoberfest. John, that's always a really big deal.
Yep, I was there as well. I didn't run across that pair.
You might not have recognized them because they were in full gear. Jen, you have some of that stuff too, don't you? You've been to...
Oh, yeah. Lederhosen, the whole works.
Yep.
It can look cute. It can be a flattering...
Yeah,
I have one of those, and it can be a flattering look. You should try it out. You'd look cute in one. Do that for Halloween.
All right, maybe next year we can all go dressed up together, but we'll get an update from Scott then. And also, we're going to get an update from Trey Faucheux at 7:35. The state Republican committee meeting was this weekend. They voted on some resolutions. They did some other business. So we're going to get a rundown from him of exactly what happened at that meeting. But Jen, you bring up a good point in that, it is devastating anytime Biden steps in front of a camera. Another clip that has gone viral this weekend, he's being asked about the strikes on Yemen, and he is totally confused.
Mr. President, will you deploy more U.S. troops to the Middle East?
Mr. President, has Netanyahu gone too far?
Any comment on the strikes in Yemen, Mr. President?
Now, of course, that audio is not great, but what he says, I've spoken to both sides. They've got to settle the strike. I'm supporting the collective bargaining effort. I think they'll settle the strike.
Yeah. He was being asked
talking
about...
to Boeing or something, I guess.
Not quite what the reporter was asking about. And so you have to wonder who is in charge right now and what kind of risk does that put us in. And I know SNL did a full rundown, and I think, Jen, you and I should do a preview of that vice presidential debate. I think all of the main characters made appearances on SNL this weekend, which I don't love SNL, but I do like when they try to do the political stuff. Typically, it's a lot funnier.
It depends. Yeah, it can be a little one-sided, but some of it can be pretty funny.
Well, in case you were worried about these Biden clips, don't be concerned because the real person that's in charge right now is Kamala. And here's what she had to say to some young girls who asked her about public speaking.
Public speaker. Okay, I can tell you. Okay. So when you're standing up to speak, remember that it's not about you.
Okay. It's not about you.
Okay, think of it like, have you learned about the Titanic? Yeah. But I've never actually
It's about the Titanic.
I really want to watch it. No. Let me tell you where this is going. So if you are on the Titanic, right, and you're on the Titanic, and you know the ship is about to sink. Yeah. And you're the only one who knows. Are you going to worry about how you look and how you sound? No. No, because the thing that's most important is that everyone knows what you know, because they need to know what you know.
I don't think she follows her own advice there. Or maybe she knows nothing. One of the two.
Or maybe
no, she knew when to jump off the Biden ship. That's for sure.
Exactly what I was thinking, Hannah. Maybe she knows she's the only one that knows the ship's going down, and so
Right.
she's telling us
still not
something.
alarming us to that or being transparent about knowing that and when she knew that. She came out being the most vocal person criticizing the special counsel that came out with a report after his investigation into whether Biden's Mar-a-Lago document situation, whether charges should be filed. Remember that? She was the most vociferous person, like accusing the attorney that did that. What was his name? The Asian guy. But he's got like a great reputation, and she went after him with a full-throated Biden's on top of his game, everything else. That was just earlier this year, lying about that.
And there's so much advice out there about public speaking. Have you ever heard anyone describe it like a sinking ship?
I don't know. I think that's not the worst thing I've ever heard her say. This you can see on Fox News right now. She's wearing a $62,000 Tiffany necklace in that shot.
And somebody
when
was
she went to the
posting
border.
pictures of her middle-class lifestyle growing up, which didn't look very middle-class to me, but I know she is being criticized. We've got, of course, the vice presidential debate coming up tomorrow. I know a lot of folks will be watching. The other thing that we are watching, Jen, you were telling me about there's a Boone County trial where someone got a not guilty on a first-degree murder charge.
Yeah, so Cordy Lionel Blewett was found not guilty of first-degree murder and armed criminal action on Thursday. I think it's the first not guilty murder verdict on a Boone County murder in over 50 years.
Wow.
Yeah, because I had the
deal.
first one in 50 years or with the murder in the second degree. So that was the second degree murder. So there hasn't been a first degree murder acquittal in any attorney's living memory that I'm aware of.
Wow.
The two very quick points, Jen. Number one, it didn't get the media attention it should have because all of us were covering. There was another murder trial going on down the hall with Cadillac Derrick, or I think it would have gotten a while. The Missourian did a little bit of coverage, but not a whole lot. But I do believe the Waffle House murder suspect, allegedly, now they got him for unlawful possession of a gun.
That was second degree murder.
That was second degree.
He was
okay.
acquitted.
Yeah, he was,
so I had a second degree murder.
You have a good point. But
acquitted. That was the only one in 60 years that I'm aware of. Then last year, Kevin O'Brien's client got acquitted, but of the second degree murder, not of the unlawful use of a weapon, because he was a felon in possession of a firearm. And this one is kind of similar situation in that they still found him guilty of count 3, and he's still sitting in jail right now. Mm-hmm. And Judge Harris would not give him an OR bond, even though he had just been acquitted of the top 2 counts, and he's been in jail almost 2 years. And the thing that he got found guilty of, there's a maximum 4-year jail sentence, and he doesn't have much of a criminal record. So ostensibly, he's not going to be staying in jail, but he sits in jail right now as we speak because there's no bond hearing set for him until the 15th, and then he has this sentencing on the 31st.
And it all deals with a motorcycle, but exactly. It's
and they
very
said self-defense, and they had an expert that said that you could tell the gun was touching the victim, AB, at the time of the homicide, at the time of the fight. So, like, he was using lawful self-defense because he was the one being attacked, and the eyewitness got caught up on the stand admitting that she had looked away right at the moment that the fight started. Yeah. And the defendant took the stand himself.
A lot going on.
So we had 2 defendants taking the stand in their murder trials last week. And I always say the road to the pen is paved with defendants who testify. But in this defendant situation, it led to his, acquittal.
Yeah, I was there when Cadillac Derrick took the stand. Of course, a different type of case, but he was arguing self-defense as well.
And he got found guilty, though, right?
He was found guilty of voluntary manslaughter, but not the murder charges. So he's
that's
still
the second one like that recently, isn't it?
Yeah. It's just, again...
The one with the Jose Jalapeño's brother who got killed, they found him guilty of manslaughter, not murder, too.
Yes.
That's unusual.
So tell us about the harsh words shared by the father of the Boone County murder victim.
Well, just so we let people know, this is a completely different case that you're asking about. This is the case on Mark Ochterberg on Friday afternoon. I was the only reporter in the courtroom. I happened to check because this trial was going to be starting on Friday, and I went to his starting on Monday today, went to his pre-trial, and he pleaded guilty to a second-degree murder charge. He was charged with first-degree murder. He admitted in court he shot and killed Justin Stidham. The father took the witness stand, and he looked over directly. He was sitting about right here, and Jennifer's been in there, let's say, to that wall. I mean, they're not close. They're not far from each other.
About the size of our studio.
Exactly. He looks over at him, and he says, "Today is not your judgment day. I hope you spend your eternity in hell." And then he continued. That's a direct
From the
quote.
witness stand?
Yes.
Okay.
He was
a victim impact statement.
Yes, technically the defense table, but yes. And then he said,
really?
he said that you are a coward. That Justin basically.
Wait, the defendant saying this, or the father?
This
of
is
the
the
victim?
father of the murder victim.
And they had him at defense table.
Yes, he was at
next to the defendant.
Well, so he was sitting to the right of Prosecutor Johnson, and then O'Brien, and then the suspect's 6 bailiffs nearby. It was very.
Oh, in the ceremonial courtroom.
It would have been in 3 West.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's unusual. They didn't have him just take the stand.
No, they did not, but they had a ton of security in there. Told him that Justin died a better man than you will ever be, and he also called him a coward, and he looked directly at him again. This is Tim talking to the man that killed his son, and he said, "Cowards don't do well in prison."
Ooh.
So it was very emotional, but I have an updated story. Our website is 93.9theeagle.com, but it was, he was upset, as you can imagine.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Oh, that's a lot. So that
I
was
bet he practiced that, thought about that, and reminisced and
Was he-
ruminated on what he would say when he had that
He
opportunity.
didn't have notes written down. And
Yeah,
he
he probably had
paused.
it all.
He made some of it. Almost thought was ad libbed. I mean, because it just. But you could be correct. But he looked up, and it didn't seem scripted to me.
Huh.
Well, let's transition here to something more positive. But we've got Jen, sports updates.
People love true crime.
They
Stephanie.
do love true crime, and we're gonna
use to the bathtub.
Well, and I think the other thing we want to talk about today a little bit is get into that death penalty debate. Jen, you were recently traveling a little bit and heard a little bit about.
Oh, it's unbelievable. So we're touring on Friday. We're touring the Michigan campus, and they have this whole plaza, and we're on this tour. And I looked down, and Brant's like, "Isn't that the Missouri guy?" It was filled with Free Palestine and Rest in Power Marcellus Williams in chalk all over the entire plaza. Like, they've made him into some sort of George Floyd type martyr. And I don't know what exactly he has to do with Free Palestine. I know he converted right to the Muslim faith while he was in prison, I believe. But so I need to do a little research on that. But his name is famous in other states, apparently.
It really is, and we've got some good data on death penalty and various governors. And it's an interesting issue to me because, Jen, you and I have been to some criminal justice panels where the issue on death penalty doesn't always break down right and left. And if you look at Missouri's history, it's not like conservative governors are executing inmates. Yeah. So I
Chris
think
Koster, when he was ostensibly Democrat Attorney General, executed a record number. We almost beat if we did not beat Texas because he was gearing up to run for governor. And I think he killed every eligible person on death row. Everyone whose appeals were exhausted
And
leading up to that gubernatorial race.
And Governor Parsons being ripped on Twitter by, especially his social media, by Marcellus Williams supporters. But I think it's important to remind people, and you know this, Jen, that it's the Missouri Supreme Court that sets execution dates. It's not the governor. Yes, the governor has clemency, but the Supreme Court is the one that actually sets and schedules the execution dates.
And his own attorneys had dropped the innocence claims at the end.
Yes,
they were
did.
arguing because the DNA on the murder weapon matched people who had handled it in the process.
point advantage for the Democrats. It has come all the way down to 12 points, Kristen, a 29-point drop in terms of that gap there on which party Hispanics identify with in just 12 years.
A massive shift amongst Latino voters as we head into the November election. And today, John has our update for the Daily DC Rundown.
Yep, Donald Trump on Sunday repeated his claims about Kamala Harris's mental state and said Joe Biden became mentally impaired. It's sad, but lying Kamala Harris, honestly, I believe she was born that way, he said at the rally in Erie, Pennsylvania. And from the night before, when he was in Prairie du Chien, Wisconsin, he said Kamala simply is mentally impaired. And Republican vice presidential nominee J.D. Vance and the Democrat Tim Walz all set for their debate. Begins tomorrow night, 8 p.m. our time. CBS, no opening statements and 90 minutes of debate time, but they will leave the mics hot.
That's
in
nice.
Between comments.
Oh, well, that's interesting.
Could be entertaining.
I'm looking forward to all of the Tim Walz dance moves because he's always doing, I think on SNL this weekend they had him doing the Macarena, but he's always got super weird dance moves. But
and
Jen,
he kicks. Have you seen this? He'll be like,
the karate kick. Don't kick too high.
He kicks. He kicks when he's clapping. It's the weird. I've never seen somebody do that, and he's wearing like weird tennis shoes too. It's very. Like, I wouldn't want to show those off.
Wasn't it Jim Gaffigan? I think that was doing Tim Walz on SNL.
Yeah. Oh, that would be fun.
I heard. Well,
I gotta watch SNL now.
I heard Jen say the same thing on Scott. And if you are not listening to our stations on the weekend, you are really missing out. Of course, Jennifer has a show on Sunday mornings, 10 to noon.
I do indeed.
And we're going to get to some of the things you talked about this weekend. We also often have Fred Perry talking about business news. I know I was really excited. He had the airport director and we were talking and the Ready director on talking about the Columbia Regional Airport. There is still hope, apparently, for a flight to Charlotte and a flight to Orlando, which I think would be really helpful. But in case you missed my reel, of course, I was out of town last week, but I had an airport beer at the Columbia Regional Airport. So
how about that?
That's progress.
That's when you rank, like, I've seen rankings of beers, like what's the best beer, like shower beer, football game beer, hot day boat beer, airport beer. Airport beer is way up there. And it was nice that they had some local selections. They had some logboat and other things. And it's kind of one of those automated Amazon markets. So you still actually do interact with the person because you need to show your ID.
Best part about Columbia Regional Airport, if you get a beer there, you technically get an edible coaster to go with it, right?
Right.
A Quaker rice cake.
There you go. Oh. I heard the rice cakes are still sticking around, but I double checked and they have Hannah's favorite snack, Nerds gummy clusters.
Oh, nice.
And some other things. And it is, I think it's just a benefit for folks traveling in. I was very excited, and I'm sure I freaked people out when I got off of the airport, because it was somebody, and he says he comes to Columbia pretty frequently for business, has a company. And I was like, ooh, but have you been here since the market opened? And he was like, no. I was like, come check this out. I was really excited.
Is the airport like paying you at this point? Because you were such a cheerleader
for
them.
Sure.
Well, I spend a lot of time there, and if you've ever been there and hungry and had to eat a meal out of the old vending machine, it's not a very pleasant experience.
It's your home away from home.
So that's really exciting. So if you missed that, you can always, and I've been trying to send people to our app because it really is so very good. I'm impressed. I have nothing to do with it.
Not too shabby, if I say so myself.
So if you want to check it out, you can get the KWOS app or the Eagle app. But you can go back, and not only can you listen live, which is helpful, but you can go back and listen to the podcast if you happen to miss those.
Oh, including of my show.
Weekend show. Now, Jen, you had a board member from the Rainbow House.
I did.
On your show. Give us an update on what's going on there.
Okay, so Tyler Willie, who's currently the president of the board of the directors for the Rainbow House, is on my show. And I had him on because last week we saw some troubling news announced from the Rainbow House. The Rainbow House started in 1986 with a simple yet powerful vision to create a safe, home-like environment for children in crisis. It was founded by foster parent Kathy Hughes, and it quickly became the only children's emergency shelter in mid-Missouri. And then they added on the Regional Child Advocacy Center, which provides forensic interviewing for kids who it's suspected have been abused sexually or physically. And so they have trained people to do those interviews. So those are two sides to the Rainbow House. Well, they came out with this Facebook message last week saying that there are major changes underway at the Rainbow House. And unfortunately, we are sharing these changes with a heavy heart. According to the findings by the board of the Rainbow House this summer, high-level decisions were not made in accordance with board-approved decisions. This has put us in a situation where we are forced to close the shelter side of our organization on Friday, September 27th. The Child Advocacy Center services will remain open. Donations are going to help the Rainbow House and the CAC to help serve the kids. And the property that the shelter sat on is now going to be owned by Little Dixie Construction because they are behind on their payments, and there's been a, quote, misallocation of funds. The executive director, Melissa Farrow, was let go. She's an attorney, longtime divorce attorney. She had been president of the board a few years ago and was made executive director a few years ago after their longtime director, Janie Batkuis, I think isn't her name, had retired. And she got $30,000 pay bump over Janie, and apparently something happened under her watch that led her to be terminated by the board in August. There's now a state investigation, and Veterans United Foundation gave $1.1 million to Rainbow House for them to build this new shelter to be able to help twice as many kids, because we have this need if kids are in an emergency situation where their parents can't take care of them, or something is happening where all of a sudden they need a safe place to stay, or they're teens. They had the Soul House at one point, which Fred Perry was a big supporter of. Now that's all gone because I believe the word is out that there's a lot of money missing, and they actually have lost their property that the shelter, the double expanded shelter, was supposed to sit on. So this is a big scandal, and we need to see some answers for what happened here.
And so the shelter's shuttered. I guess what is there now? If they go in and they clean house at the Rainbow House,
And so Tyler has stepped up, and now he's the new board president. We have a loan officer from Veterans United who has stepped up to be treasurer, which brave man there, given the situation of their finances. And I think they're going to try to spin it off into two separate organizations. That's what Tyler was saying on my show yesterday, where you have the one side with the state money. Instead, we were unique. Our Rainbow House was unique in that it was under one umbrella, the two different things, like the emergency shelter for the kids and the Child Advocacy Center, where they do the forensic interviews of children to be used in courtroom proceedings, which I'm very familiar with that whole process. I think they're going to try to set the shelter up as a separate deal from the Child Advocacy Center going forward and maybe try to acquire another shelter. But one has to ask, why would you give a bunch of money to build another shelter again? You'd have to have a lot of faith in the new leadership that the funds won't disappear.
I was thinking that either, since they've cleaned house, is there the ability for them to basically reopen the shelter, or would there be an opportunity?
Well, the money is gone. I mean, they were given all this money, and now they don't even own property to build the thing on.
Well, yeah. I mean, would there be an opportunity for someone else, not the Rainbow House, to step in and provide these services?
Yeah. I don't know. Time will tell. I think that they're good people, well-meaning people that have stepped up to try to save this thing. But Little Dixie Construction now owns the property where the shelter was. And I guess I learned on my show from interviewing Tyler, while this construction was taking place, they weren't doing overnight shelter anymore for kids while the construction, which was supposed to have been done last month, is not going to happen now.
Wow. That's really devastating for Mid-Missouri.
Yeah, and they serve not just Mid-Missouri, they serve a huge number of counties, like 21 counties.
Do we have any idea? I know here we've done a lot of interviewing with like True North and women's shelters, and most
True
of
North,
those.
yeah, but this is the only one where kids could be accepted by themselves. All the other ones, it's like women's battered shelters or whatever. The women can bring their kids in with them. This is the only one for kids that don't have a place to go that's a safe place.
Well, and I know for True North, their footprint, and even in Jefferson City with RACs, their footprints they serve many, many counties. And so I think the same is for Rainbow House. So it's not just a Boone County issue.
Yeah, it's 21 counties that they were covering. So this is a complete scandal. This is an organization that's been around since 86, and now is as a shelter, and now as of Friday is done.
Do we have any? It came as such a surprise. Do we have any idea like what the timeline is on trying to either get something back up and running or completing this investigation?
He was very reluctant to share with me the details of the investigation, saying there's an ongoing investigation. As an attorney, I can understand, he's probably been advised about that. But I was like, what do you mean by state investigation? Why hasn't Columbia Police Department been called about this? Mm-hmm. Because it sounds like there's possible embezzlement taking place. So I don't know. He said that the organization that oversees these child advocacy centers is doing some sort of audit and investigation into where's the money at.
Well, and at this point, you would even maybe suspect the Attorney General stepping in, right? I mean, in some circumstances with these investigations.
Yeah, maybe
State
whatever they come up with,
maybe.
then they'll call the police. I don't know.
Wow, That's tough. Well, I know also on the local front last week, I was not pleased to be out of town and hear again that Southern Boone had an additional threat, and someone else. So that was the third threat? No, fourth. John's saying fourth, and and a lot of these are related to social media. I was, and I'd encourage folks to take time. I do think, I know we ding school districts a lot for not being transparent, and we've been, and I know a lot of parents have been frustrated.
Well, I saw a photo that the one kid allegedly posted after he made a threat and they shut the school down. He's posting himself with aiming a gun at the mirror.
Yep, saw that too.
After. That wasn't before, that was after. Why does he have a gun in his hand after he's made the threat at all?
Well, then we had the deal with down in Versailles the other day. They forced a lockdown in the Versailles schools because of a active shooter threat there that didn't pan out. The Dixon schools, they pulled the plug on classes. They took a kid into custody in Hallsville. And then around Fort Leonard Wood, Pulaski County schools had some threats as well. So it was, whether it was copycats or whatever, it was pretty widespread last week.
And were those all middle
when I was in
schoolers?
high school, I think there were bomb
Middle
threats.
schoolers,
A couple of
most of
bomb
them.
threats shut down school.
We talked about
there
that.
was a spate of that, like in the
when I was in when
late
I went to
90s, early aughts. Wasn't that a thing back then?
Oh yeah, when I went to JC, I remember, and I told the story a couple weeks ago. I remember it was Dr. Pemberton, and we were in the middle of our lunch hour, and he stood on a lunch table and said, "Everyone out now," and everyone took off running. Yeah, and we had several where we sat in the stadium.
Scary.
Oh, it was horrifying.
Oh my God.
That was, there was kind of a rash of that, and you wonder, like, is it
a copycat?
Yeah, contagion on some of these issues, especially amongst our youth. I will say,
kids are pretty dumb. I agree with Kamala on that. Like, it's the stupidest age in any human being's life. I mean, they can be I have a brilliant 17-year-old, but he's also very dumb in some ways because it's just that age. They're big enough bodies, and they have all these hormones, and they're impulsive. It's a rough age for kids, and younger than that, that was terrible. We're getting a text about the.
Yeah, I did. Okay, we are getting some texts, and I'm gonna break Hannah's rule about reading for the first time. But we're saying, as a CASA volunteer in Cole County, this is CASA. Sorry, this is a devastating loss by one of our CASA volunteers in Cole County.
Oh no, yeah, that's horrible. I was one of the first CASA volunteers. I was on the first class sworn in Boone County. Actually.
Really?
Okay. Yeah, that's a great organization for people that want to help these kids that are in need.
Well, and I know there are so many people, whether you're a CASA volunteer or, an attorney, that have used the services or have benefited from the services from the Rainbow House. I know there's been a lot of community support, like from Veterans United Foundation. So hopefully not only the new leaders announced, but other folks who have been involved can come together. Well, I don't know.
I think that Veterans United Foundation needs to think long and hard before they're the main ones to step up for an organization like this when their money went bye-bye. Last time.
It's tough. Well, the other thing the one thing you said, kids are really stupid. So I was really pleased to see, we did get an email, and Southern Boone is trying to be more proactive. And I'd like to see other schools, it sounds like around mid-Missouri, kind of step up with this, in that they're now conducting, private lessons and assemblies for each grade level about social media and the use of social media. They sent out the dates, and they're talking to the kids, and they said the counselors are doing information sessions on the impact of social media safety, and when and how to report situations. And so I do like to see that because I think what we heard, at least initially, there were a lot of rumors floating around, and a lot of these threats are being shared on social media. I think there were some anonymous accounts that were involved. And so, my kids don't have social media because I feel like it's an animal that I'm not prepared to
like ticking time
fully.
Bomb.
love him. He's like BFFs with Morgan Wallen, has written a lot. He was a writer, I think, before he performed himself. And he actually wrote that Blake Shelton song, God's Country, and he will perform it at his concerts. And so right before he performed that song, you heard a lot of bleeps. Hardy has a potty mouth. But he said something like, if you don't like living here, then bleep, go live somewhere else, bleep. The United States is the greatest country on this planet. And so
he's talking about all the things that he sees online and all the people who want to whine about living in this country. And he's like, it's the greatest country on earth.
So in honor of Hardy doing that this weekend, you're going to hear some bump music today by Hardy, one of my favorite people. Check him out. But yeah, you can, if you want to hear the unbleeped version, go ahead and you can go over to Libs of TikTok, and they posted his rant that is not super radio friendly.
Yeah, just make sure there's not any little ears around you.
It's a lot. So back to this. So you guys are my true crime lovers. And you love good true crime, so you have to visit this place that was featured in the Columbia Tribune. It is a house in Brumley. Has anyone ever been to Brumley? John?
The greater Tuscumbia Iberia Metroplex.
What?
Miller County.
This
neck
article
of the woods.
says
Miller County.
Yeah, this article says it's like in between the Lake of the Ozarks and Springfield. Is that right?
Closer to us than anybody, really.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, this house is over 100 years old, and it's going to be on a new HGTV show called The Midwest Gets Mysterious. And I guess it's competing against other haunted castles or mansions for a $150,000 renovation. This castle, apparently you can pay to go on a tour, and they have Halloween candlelight tours for $35, but is apparently haunted. You don't like?
Nope.
I don't like scary movies either. I don't think I could do it.
Stand
I can do scary movies because I know it's not real, right? Like I'm sitting on my couch, eating a snack, watching this made-up movie, but being actually there, it's a no from me, dog.
Same. I love the MSP tour, the tours of Missouri State Penitentiary, the history tour, but I refuse to go on the haunted.
I was gonna say I've done that tour during the day, not the one that they do at night.
You guys should do a bet, and the loser of the bet between the two of you has to go on the Missouri Penitentiary haunted tour.
You know,
I did the tour with former deputy warden and Jefferson City Councilman Mark Schreiber, who promptly locked me in the dungeon cell with no lights, no windows, no nothing.
No,
I'm getting the EBGBs just thinking about it.
Well, and the other thing, even in daylight, they'll let you, because the gas chamber there has 2 seats, which is like really rare, and they'll let you sit in the chairs. And then,
in case they need to execute a really fat person or what?
No, they executed a husband and a wife together.
No,
yeah, they did.
Yeah, no, and their photos are right.
Everyone never do that these days.
They have a photo of every inmate on the wall there next to it.
Which
That's a little morbid.
It's real morbid.
Which will also give you the heebie-jeebies. If you haven't done the tour, you really should. The other tour that happened this weekend that I was sad to miss was that Capitol Avenue tour of a lot of those homes. Missouri politics and the Missouri Times. Now, Scott, it was like a national holiday in your household, I think, this weekend. I saw former Mayor Carrie Turgeon opened up Jefferson City's Oktoberfest saying, "We are all German today." And you were there for this. Tell us about it.
Well, I get to be German every day. It's a wonderful feeling. And yes, I was in Old Bunichburg for the dash hound races, the beer. My buddy Harrison played in the band. It was outstanding. Of course, everyone wants to be German. You know, the Irish, they celebrate their heritage one day a year. We do it for about 4 weeks here in the fall.
The outfits were my favorite. If you haven't been on Scott's social media and seen the outfits, they were fantastic. I think we've decided we're going to have a field trip and we're all going to dress up. Jen has an outfit too, so I need to get one and we'll all be there with you next year, I think. All right.
Well, you don't have to wait till next year. There's Oktoberfest all over Missouri. I'll find us one for next weekend.
Stephanie speaks for herself, by the way.
And I kind of have a busy schedule. You know, there's an election coming up, and that kind of puts a damper in some of my scheduling. Speaking of the election, first let's talk about your show this weekend. You had Jefferson County Sheriff Dave Marshak on your show, and about the death of David Lee on Sunday morning. Officer David Lee was killed responding to a vehicle crash, and it is alleged that he was killed by an illegal immigrant. I saw the stat on Twitter. It says acting ICE director confirmed in a letter that the Biden and Harris administration caught and then released into the U.S. more than 400,000 convicted criminals, including among them are more than 13,000 convicted of murder and more than 15,000 convicted of sexual assault. And while I know during the primary, we had a lot of candidates out there saying, oh, it's not a Missouri issue. You know, they were criticizing our legislature for having that new committee.
Tell that to David Lee's family.
Exactly. And so, you know, you had Sheriff Marshak on your show talking about what happened and how his folks are responding to these crimes that are being committed. And if there's anything folks in Missouri can do, the law enforcement folks in Missouri can do when they find out that these people committing crimes are illegal. What did he tell you?
Well, I asked him what happens when you find someone you believe is illegal, and he's like, well, under Republican administrations, we call ICE, and they usually come, and we don't see them again. He goes, but since Biden took over, they just don't take your call. They say, don't worry about it. They say, release them, and we'll talk to them later. Look, here's the thing. I think, you know, for being on this show, I always admit I've always been a Republican, but I'm not some person that's looking to find minuscule faults in Joe Biden. I think he's a good man. He's just past his prime. I also think that it is an absolute policy of the Democrat Party not to have a border when they have the White House. And I guess I would give the old adage, prove me wrong. When there's a Democrat administration, they're not going to have a border. You do not have a southern border right now. You just don't. How many people have been down there that we both talked to? They say, just walk right by. There's just no border there. So I asked him, well, what could the legislature do? I mean, all these people talk about being tough on illegal immigration, but do they really do anything? And he goes, well, the only thing I could think they could do, coming from the sheriff, is you're going to have your own database, because if the Democrats are in charge, they will not give law enforcement access to that database. So we're going to have our own database of who's a citizen and who's not, and we're going to have our own detention areas and make it illegal to be illegal here. Now, all of those things will be challenged in court, and it'll be a tough fight. Passing them will actually be the easier part. The court fights will be the tough part. But do you mean it? Did you mean any of the immigration stuff? I tend to think they didn't mean any of it. I think it was just stuff that polled well. I don't think Missouri will do anything, if you want the truth, to help curtail legal immigration. We will see more of these incidents like happened with David Lee happen in our state.
Scott, what about the whole thing? We had Senator Schmidt on with us, and he talked at length the other day about the illegals who go get driver's licenses in Missouri and are asked, in other states, and are asked, hey, do you want to sign up to vote? And they go ahead, and there's been instances they've documented of people who weren't allowed to vote getting on the rolls.
Well, I being on the roll, I guess, I don't think Missouri has a major problem with it. I know it's fashionable these days to point out the flaws in Jay Ashcroft, but I don't think he had illegals voting. I don't believe right now you can point to any number of illegals actually voting in our elections. However, I mean, look, I guess it goes back to, is this politics or is this problem solving? The fact is this country needs people to work. Ask any employer in this state, and they'll tell you we need employees. And to me, if you're willing to work for a living, man, I'm in. What can I do to help? What do we do? But until they actually want to solve the problem and find a way to get people legal to meet the labor needs and to kind of know who's coming in, there's not a serious solution. And really the Republican solution is just building a wall. I mean, even Trump says, we're going to build a wall till we find out what's going on, and then we're going to solve a problem. I think you have to have an actual problem solve here, and I don't know that this country is mature enough right now to solve any problems.
It's tough. So you don't see immigration dominating the next legislative session at all?
Oh, look, I mean, how many hundreds of millions of dollars would it cost to create your own detention center for illegals, your own database for who's legal, a new set of statutes to allow Missouri courts to prosecute you for being here illegally? Then I think they may try to do some token thing, but no. Do I think that folks want to pay higher taxes for that program? I think that's where the rubber meets the road. It's like we're all for all these great ideas. Who wants to pay for them? Oh, no, don't tax me, tax that man behind that tree. Do I think the state will have a $250 million appropriation to fund this? No, I don't. I think they'll do some kind of Facebook-themed stuff. And honestly, if you want the truth, it should not be on the states to do this. I'm a believer the federal government should do very few things, but securing this country should be one of them. Honestly, I think the federal government should get this done. Do I think the federal government could get anything done? No, God, no. No, not at all. I don't. I also think that this is a convenient problem to allow to continue for both sides. The Democrats ultimately think they'll get some new voters at some point in this, and the Republicans have a business interest that contribute to their campaigns who absolutely profit from illegal labor. So I think it's a problem that behooves both sides to continue on, and I think it will.
Scott Faughn is our guest. He is live with us here on Wake Up Mid-Missouri 93.9 The Eagle and News Radio 950 KWS. Our time right now is 7:15. I want to go back, Stephanie, ask about obviously illegal immigration, and you mentioned we as a country need employees right now. Tomorrow, Scott, it's an interim committee at the Capitol, bipartisan. It's called the Special Interim Committee on Workforce Innovation and Technology. Chairman Lewis Riggs, who you know well from Hannibal, has called the hearing. No public testimony, but there are going to be a couple of presentations. Carla Esslinger, the commissioner of DESE, is going to testify tomorrow, along with Perry Gorel of DESE as well, is going to testify. And then Kara Korchis and also Karen Bushman, who's from Argyle, from the Missouri Chamber of Commerce, will testify as well. But one of the big issues they're going to talk about is workforce development. No public testimony, if you will. What do you see happening there?
Well, number one, we have to welcome Kara Korchis, the newest resident of Jefferson City, to town. Mm-hmm. Very excited that that things have worked out well for them and they've succeeded in life and they get to live here in mid-Missouri now. Happy for them. Number two, look, I as far as the presentations, will that matter? Yeah, probably not. But I think that the work that Carl Esslinger has done in the short amount of time at DESE has been phenomenal. I think the way you saw somehow somebody had the idea to put more into DESE, which I'm not sure in hindsight, lays very well. But these daycare center providers that weren't getting paid, mm-hmm. You had a problem solver come in, and she solved the problem. And now they're on the way to getting paid. And everybody that's worked with her throughout this will rave about her. So I think that's the type of you actually have somebody in there who's competent, who's willing to ruffle feathers, who's willing to call a spade a spade. And you've had this politically correct world of DESE for so long. It's became almost irrelevant because with that political correctness, it just eats at the core of everything you do. When your whole concern is political correctness and not hurting anybody's feelings, you become the St. Louis Cardinals, complete losers. And so
I've never heard Scott say that before.
Oh, it's trust me, it's so sad. I saw the press conference. They're going to keep the exact same losers that lost the last 2 years. I've never been more pessimistic about the Cardinals, therefore the United States of America, than I am today. I wish Carla Esslinger would go be the general manager of the Cardinals. I think she would do an immensely better job, and I think she's done a terrific job at DESE so far. And I guess you ain't seen nothing yet. I'm kind of interested to hear what her plans are going forward, because I do think finally you have someone in an education, this alphabet soup of establishment junk. you finally have someone who's willing to say 2 + 2 = 4. The emperor has no clothes. She's willing to deal in reality, not in this silly world of, we can't offend anybody in education. Even if you do a terrible job, we can't say that. Honestly, under the old administration, Ollie Marmol would have been a superintendent somewhere. Under Carl Esslinger, he wouldn't even be getting to mow the grass.
Wow.
All right, let's look at this U.S. Senate race before we run out of time. Now, if you live your life on Twitter, you maybe would be believing right now that this race is heating up. And Jen reminded me that there's a big virtual rally tonight for
a Zoom meeting
for Lucas Kuntz, featuring John Hamm and Andy Cohen. But certainly certainly things are getting heated, at least on the social media front. What do you make of this race right now?
Well, I think the race, I've never thought this would be much of a race, if you want the truth. I think Josh Hawley is by and large popular in this state, and it's a Republican state in a presidential year. Trump's going to win by a ton. I still think that's the case. I think it's funny. Lucas Kuntz is a very good candidate. He can raise money. He's got a good backstory. But if you're going to start picking out flaws, maybe authenticity, he doesn't come off as the most authentic guy, which is also, if you're going to pick apart Josh Hawley, I mean, it's not the holding your fist up to protesters that anybody cares about. It's when the door shuts, running away from them. I think if you were going to attack him on authenticity, though, you needed a more authentic candidate than Lucas Kuntz. If I had to guess this race, I've always thought it would be about a 15-point race, not far off from Trump now that Hawley's an incumbent. Look, I do think the race may be in the high single digits. You may be looking at a 9 to 11-point race right now. And will that be enough to get one of the national parties to come in and put some money in? Maybe. We'll see.
Well, who's putting it?
Yes, I think the race is tightened from very far behind to closer.
Scott, I hardly see any political ads, but I've seen tons of Lucas Kuntz ads for some reason. They're running on Fox News for whatever reason, and I watch through YouTube TV. I see him on social media. I see him everywhere. So he's getting money from somewhere to run all these ads, pretending to be a Republican, which he's not.
I saw some anti-Lucas Kuntz ads during the Chiefs game yesterday. I did see that. Well, I think Lucas Kuntz is a great fundraiser. Now, it looks to me, just from an outside observer, like he's taken all his money and put it front-loaded in September to try to get this race tightened so that the national folks will take an interest and spend some money. Probably the best strategy he could do. Mm-hmm. But I do think if you look, he's going to be running low on money, and it's going to be – look, Lucas Kuntz should lose this race. He should lose this race by around 10 points. And I think right now Lucas Kuntz is losing this race by around 10 points. Now, does he have the ability to make that closer? I would have always said no, but I'm kind of in the thought that maybe that's it. Maybe the closeness is maybe it's going to be a little tighter than I expected.
Because of Amendment 3, right?
I still think Josh Hawley's going to. I think Amendment 3 helped. The presidential year helps. I think Kamala Harris polling much better than Joe Biden helps. And this state is a Republican state, but I mean, an 8-point win for the reelection of a U.S. senator is still a great win. And I think that's kind of what Josh Hawley's looking at. Mm-hmm. He's going to win comfortably, but maybe not as comfortably as he was hoping back in the early spring.
Well, and you have to wonder even if that national money comes in, is it going to be too little, too late? We saw, the airwaves get so crowded in the primary, and with all the money behind all of the ballot measures, is there going to be a lot to buy by the time, maybe he convinces some additional people to donate? All right, I'm going to be on time for What's Hot with Hannah, and I think
I'm not going to take the beat for that.
I hate to break it to you, Steph. It's already too late to be on time for What's Hot with Hannah.
Darn it. Okay, well,
Jen.
We'll
blame me.
Okay, I guess we'll have our debate about grammar and pronunciation of the state next Monday when we join you.
It was so nice of Boonville to come to Wardsville Friday night. They didn't score any points, but they were nice enough to drive over.
And of course, we'll have Casey Burns.
disagree very strongly about footwear, specifically when it comes to Crocs. I think they're hideous.
Hey Dudes.
Well, yeah,
Are also hideous.
Stephanie doesn't like Hey Dudes or my
Hey Dudes
Hokas.
are okay.
Gross.
I think when comparing a Hey Dude to a Croc, which looks like a Swiss cheese piece of foam, I don't feel like you can compare the two. But anyway, Crocs has done it again. They've one-upped the ugliness factor with their, quote, over puff shorty. I've posted a photo of this monstrosity on the Wake Up Mid Missouri Facebook page.
Adding it to my Christmas list now.
If you want a pair of these, it's going to set you back about $90.
They've gotten
For Crocs?
They've
Oh
gotten
my God.
so expensive.
It looks
You
like
could almost buy real shoes for that.
right. It looks like those old school moon bounce shoes from the 90s.
Yep.
Oh, here they are.
Snowmobile boots. Isn't that what they used to call those?
Kind of, sort of. So
Yeah.
it's up on this big foam platform.
There you go.
And then the top of it looks like a puffer coat. They're fleece lined. The outside is quilted. And they literally were going for a puffer jacket for your feet.
They almost kind of look
it
like
looks
those.
better than Crocs, though.
But you know those Yeezy slides they kind of look like a Croc and they're like big and poofy? I've seen several pairs of those recently. They kind of look like that. I don't know what the big deal is. If you need
Stephanie.
I have a whole array of different Crocs. I think I own like
That's not something to brag about.
It is 7 pairs. If you don't have Crocs, you're missing out. They're comfortable. They wash easily. You can wear them in the Vance is not middle America, but I love he's trying to lean into the I'm a coach, I'm a dad. SNL's take on him, this one was great.
Folks, I haven't been this excited since I got a 10% rebate on a leaf blower from Menards. What can I say? I got that BDE, Big Dad Energy.
So I really enjoyed the SNL, the clips that I've seen from this weekend.
I panicked for just a second.
Oh, yeah, sorry. If we have gotten ourselves in trouble with that acronym before, but SNL was doing a great job. And I loved the people who raced to say if he actually knew anything about Menards, it's an 11% rebate, not a 10% rebate. Typically, who shops at Menards? Anybody
And
here?
we can save big money if we don't elect him and Harris.
Hey, Hannah.
Hannah stole the joke right out from under me.
All right. Well, now we are joined by Trey Faucheux. He works for the Missouri GOP. He was at the state committee meeting this weekend. It's an annual meeting that they do, and there's
quarterly.
Well, quarterly. Okay, but this one is of particular importance, the one right before the election. So tell us, who was there and what went on.
Yeah, so the state committee meeting is a quarterly meeting of the 68 one man and one woman from each senatorial district elected by the senatorial district committees. They are elected for a 2-year term, and they come together and they kind of act as the board of directors or the governing board of the Missouri Republican Party in a way.
And now they all just reorged, correct?
Yes, but the new one doesn't take their seats until January.
So this is the old.
Correct. This was the last meeting of the old board, and we thank them for their service to the state. Just this single group in this 2-year term has over a century of experience. Quite literally, 68 times 2 just in this last term is over 100 years served collectively between them.
So tell us, so they come together quarterly. Tell us what typically happens at this meeting and then what happened on Saturday.
Yeah, so it's really a functional business meeting. They receive a lot of reports, but what we're really excited about this time is we've actually passed 2 resolutions. Number 1 is a resolution encouraging all Missourians to vote no on Amendment 3.
Thank you.
Amendment 3, as you both know, is this terrible thing, and we really need to see it defeated at the polls. And the other one is Amendment 7, and we issued a resolution in support of Amendment 7, which I was very excited to see.
So tell us more about Amendment 7.
Amendment 7, it's a little complicated, honestly, in my opinion. It's, how do I even want to explain this?
Putting you on the spot this morning, Trey.
That's the non-citizen voting one.
Yeah.
And no ranked choice voting.
Yeah, I view it more towards the ranked choice voting. Alaska right now has a Democrat representing it statewide, and it's because of ranked choice voting. We really don't want to see that in Missouri. It's an awful process. To me, it undermines the vote at the ballot, and we're really glad to see the state committee vote to support us not having that.
And not only in Alaska, but in a lot of areas, it's used locally to elect various elected representatives. And I know Jennifer and I were at a conference, a Republican National Lawyers Association, where some experts kind of played out how these votes occurred. And it was just fascinating to see, because then, they eliminate somebody and then they recount the votes. And it was like in many of these races, it's like the person that no one picked as their first choice ends up being the person that's elected. And you're like, how can that be? It makes for bizarre results.
It's very, to me, I view it very similarly to the Missouri Nonpartisan Court Plan. It skews everything away from the party in power into the party that has almost no one living there. So it's
great for squishes.
Exactly. It's great for squishes, and it skews everything just way too far away from where the public actually is.
Can you talk any about the sentiment at the meeting? I know, with the delegates and the RNC convention, there's been a lot of debate and a lot of, I think, frustration and consternation within the party. On Saturday, it sounds like everyone came together to rally in support of Amendment 7 and against Amendment 3. Is that the feeling that you got on Saturday?
It really was. I was very happy to see that the entire state committee really does seem committed to pushing forward, getting Republicans elected up and down the ballot, defeating Amendment 3, supporting Amendment 7. We actually did have the governor, or the next governor of the state of Missouri, there to address the state committee as well. And, he talked about a need for us to really come together to defeat Amendment 3, and that was a very big part of the meeting.
So Mike Kehoe was there. I know my law partner, Mark Ellinger, joined the state committee meeting for a brief moment about election integrity efforts and volunteerism. Can you talk to folks? We've got a lot of people out there who I think have concerns about election integrity as we head into November. You all are helping recruit volunteers. If people are interested in getting more involved, how do they do that?
Yeah, Mark gave a great presentation about the poll challenger system in Missouri, and that's I'll be honest, I didn't realize how complicated it is. I was the one overseeing reorganization to some extent for the party, and I'll tell you what, I have nightmares about state statute chapter 115 now, but
yes.
This was a very complicated process, but getting involved itself could not be more simple. The best way to do it is to really talk to your county chair, talk to local groups, and just find out who the players are in your area, get in touch with them, and keep on attending meetings, going to the polls, knocking doors, that kind of thing.
Yeah, because there's really two roles on Election Day. You can sign up through the clerk's office and be an election judge, but you can also be a challenger. But in that way, they have to know that you have to sign up ahead of time, because the county chair then has to, quote unquote, credential you and provide a list to the county clerk that then allows you to officially be there to be a poll challenger, correct?
Correct. And it's a little bit of a more complicated process to be a challenger. It's a long day. It's a thankless day, as is being an election judge. But, Boone County here, we struggle with having enough Republican election judges. And I don't know the last time we've had an election challenger or a poll challenger actually here in Boone County for the Republicans.
Josh, we had Senator Schmidt on with us the other day, and kind of circling back to Amendment 7, the voting rights issue and all that. He sort of indicated some concerns out there that when people hear the stories about illegal immigrants getting driver's licenses and then being asked if they want to sign up to vote, they wonder if that is actually the way it goes in Missouri. And I think there's some confusion over just what the law says, especially for the voters come November.
Yeah, I will say, obviously, we're joined by two of the best, but I am not a lawyer. And getting registered to vote, it's not a complicated process. Sometimes I wish it were a little bit more difficult. I signed up for my high school's library on my 17-and-a-half birthday, which is the earliest day I was eligible to sign up to vote. But
did you have to show a license?
No, I had to type in the driver's license number to verify it, but I did not have to actually physically show my license too.
If you do it at the clerk's office, you have to show a license, but then I remember Mizzou, you can register, and I think I did that there, and I don't remember whether or not I had to show an ID of any sort.
And now there's certain procedures by which you can even register or change your address online, which causes me some concern. I will push back.
I'll be honest. I will say that I may be mistaken. I may have had to send in a picture of my license. It's been several years at this point. That
might be.
Well, and for folks, I know Scott Faughn said he wasn't aware of people voting illegally, but I'm going to push back. If you go, I like to go to heritage.org. They've got a great fraud database. And if you go to the fraud database and you search by our state, two of the more recent fraud instances were about illegals voting in elections. And this one, there's a Cuban national living in Kansas City who was indicted and pled guilty to federal charges of casting a fraudulent election ballot. They said he voted illegally in 6 elections between 2010 and 2014. So for folks saying it doesn't happen, we there's at least 2 documented cases of people being convicted for voting in Missouri elections illegally. And I can't imagine with the number of people that have been flooding into this country that they're, and I'm not like pointing the finger or placing blame on anybody. I think, it's a lot of people to monitor. And we know we've had bulldogs in our state, like Cherie Tolson Rice, who's like, we got to get these dead people off the rolls. But I mean, it's a lot to manage, especially with the kinds of numbers of people that we're talking about. And so I think it does happen. And I'm glad to see that we're going to be voting to make sure that only citizens are voting, but then there's got to be some type of enforcement, right? And figuring out who's here legally and who's here illegally.
Yeah, and it really goes to underscore the importance of both Amendment 7 on the whole and the resolution that the state committee passed on Saturday.
And that could prevent local municipalities from doing things like we've seen in New York and whatnot, where they're allowing non-citizens to vote on municipal issues.
Well, talk to us a little bit. So we had this meeting on Saturday. When is the next meeting, and what's that transition then look like? Are we going to see a lot of the same people? Are we seeing a lot of new people coming in? You were the reorg specialist.
I was. So now I get to explain why I have nightmares about Chapter 115.
Okay.
So Chapter 115, there's several sections dedicated specifically to these committees and the makeup of the parties, as you're aware. The way that state committee members are elected, there's 2 dates allowed in statute. Number 1 is the date they reorganize, and number 2 is the Saturday following the general election. So most of the new members have been elected, but we don't have all of them elected. Some of them will be elected on Saturday, November, I want to say that's 9th. That sounds
Maybe.
right.
Okay.
But then they will all come together in January at a location and date to be determined still. But they will come together to form the new state committee for a 2-year term.
All right. And so for folks, so talk to us more about zooming out, what that state committee, so you can pass resolutions. What else is the state committee in charge of?
So the state committee really is, I like to equate it to our board of directors. It's made up of 1 man and 1 woman from each senatorial district who come together to really oversee what the staff is doing, where the money that the party has is going, what the party is doing to go and win these elections. Right now, I'm really proud of what the party is doing on the whole. I mean, we have, I believe, 21 members of staff right now, which just huge. 1 year ago, I want to say we had 2, if that. It might have just been 1. So coming in, we've really just turned everything around at the staff side of things, and we are out there knocking doors. We're in Kansas City. We are in St. Louis. We're here in Columbia. We're down in Springfield, making sure that those vulnerable seats stay in Republican hands, and we actually turn a few from the Democrats over to us.
I like it. All right. Well, thanks for the update from Saturday. I know the meetings are open to the public, though, right? So if people would want to attend, they could?
That's correct.
All right. So we'll make sure.
meal of Swedish meatballs, beets, and pickled herring. Jarl Borestad was sitting next to the guy whose meal had the mouse in it, told the BBC that people on board remained calm, but he immediately pulled his socks up over his pants leg so the mouse couldn't crawl up his leg. And an airline spokesman said, such events happen extremely rarely. Nice to know. Passengers were transferred to another plane and went on their merry way. They were all given a one-time 25% IKEA discount coupon, tickets to the Norwegian National Museum, and a free coupon to Drunigen's Kebab, Turkish kebab shop chain. And now you know
Wow.
the
So
rest of that deal.
That was totally worth it.
You gotta love the airlines. They like delay your flight by 10 hours and they're like, here's a $10 breakfast coupon. And you're like, thanks for that.
And a bag of peanuts.
Hannah, did you get the photo that I sent you from on your text?
Yeah. I wish I hadn't.
There was some bad behavior on some plane rides that I took recently, including a man with his bare feet on the car, took his shoes off, bare feet on the carpeting. He dropped something, Hannah, and he picked it up with with his toes.
Very good.
I can do that. Can you do that?
Not in public. I probably could, but I don't want to.
Steph, you need to recycle your pit bull story for the folks who've never heard that one.
Yeah, one time it was when I was flying on Southwest and I had paid extra to be in like A1. I was in the front row and a lady came in and it was like an 80-pound pit bull support dog, I guess. And she wanted to sit in the middle of me and this other gentleman and bring her dog with us. And I got told, you get to move. And
that went over really well, didn't it?
If you don't want this pit bull sitting on your feet, you can get up and move. And I thought, wow, won't be flying Southwest again. There's a reason for that. It was not pleasant. And that's the second time I've been booted out of my seat for a dog, actually. The other one, it was almost, I don't know that I would call it a dog. I think I would call it a horse. I don't know what it was. But for all of these victims? I mean, we have states that are in complete crisis, whole towns that were wiped out. What's the death toll, John?
Was 116, I think, at last count.
And I can't imagine that it's not going to just tick higher based on just what we've seen on social media. I mean, it's, I think about the flooding and how devastating it's been when we've had it here, significant flooding in Missouri. But my understanding, and have you been to Asheville, Jennifer?
No, I have not.
But my understanding is it's up in the mountains, and so all that water is just rushing. And they said a lot of the folks that got killed were basically downed trees, right, John?
Yeah, a lot of trees down, a lot of flooding, like you said, where they got some areas of the county there got up to well over 20 inches of rain in one shot.
And then you think about, the power outages. I think a lot of people are struggling. I saw lots of pleas for help, people saying that they were now only accessible by air because the roadways have been washed away, and that they had limited food supply. And in the lot, I think there were a couple of stores that were open that I saw, and the lines were very long, and people, I think, took rightfully so, shots at Kamala, saying, and here she wants to get rid of all of gas appliances, and the only thing that's, helping us out here is gas and being able to provide for our families. And so I just see random pleas for help, and we've got a lot of, I think, private folks on the ground, either that are trying to either evacuate people or provide resources. We will be talking to Gale Blomenkamp at 8:35 about Missouri Task Force 1 and what they are doing in North Carolina. But it seems like the federal government has been totally absent and fallen down on the job.
Shades of Katrina and FEMA.
And it's hard because they have such, there's limited cell phone, I think, activity. And I know they had put up, I saw some private entity had been putting up Starlink providers to try to give people access, because a lot of folks have said they had just been unable to reach these folks, and they've lost all communication. And so I think we are just beginning to learn of the devastation in these states, and I just think if you're a state like, living in Missouri, we have flooding. We've had really horrible disasters here. What are our legislators and our elected officials thinking about as we head forward as far as what kind of resources we would need, because it feels like they're very much on their own.
It does, doesn't it? Because you're hearing, the cautions on the front end going in from all the elected officials and the emergency response people like the emergency managers. But then on the backside, it's been kind of, I don't know if quiet's the right word, but we're not getting a lot of information coming this way now.
Yeah, it's frustrating. I'm interested to hear what Gale Blomenkamp is hearing from his folks that are on the ground there. Again, we'll be talking to him at 8:35. And just a quick preview for tomorrow, we are expecting to touch base with Randy, our international traveler. Was he anxious last week, Hannah, about traveling internationally still?
A little.
Okay, we've got...
He's traveled to Europe before, he said, when his son was studying over there, so it's not an unknown quantity, I think, for the Toblers.
Okay.
Those are great locations that they're going to.
Yeah, you've been.
Yeah,
Jen.
he's been posting a lot of great stuff on the Wake Up in Missouri Facebook page. So there's some content over there you can go check out if you want to see what he's up to.
So we will be checking in with him tomorrow. We will have Casey Burns in as a guest co-host. We'll also be talking to our friend Chris Arps. Now, a couple of other local things going on. Now, as we head into the November election, it is Missouri Ethics Commission complaint season. A lot of folks, you'll see Ethics Commission complaints flying. I know there was a recent dust-up with, I think, Representative Cherie Tolson-Reich. I think she's corrected the error, and it's basically a nothing burger. Is that your take, Jen?
Well, apparently she had a complaint filed against her because one of her signs did not have, it was posted at the corner of Business Loop and Rangeline in Columbia. It promoted her campaign, but it failed to include the paid-for language required under Missouri law. Tolson-Reich said in a statement that was dated on Wednesday, my campaign was notified that Representative Doug Mann, Democrat, filed a complaint with the Missouri Ethics Commission that a printed material did not have paid for by on it. It was a clerical error, and it has since been corrected. So it's time to nitpick on each other, I guess.
Well, and the paid for by disclosure, I mean, I think that's an important one, because a lot of times you get independent groups participating in various things, and you want to know, okay, if you're handing me this piece of information or you've got a billboard up, who is paying for this message? I think between campaigns and printers, things can happen, and it sounds like she's already taken care of the issue. I think particularly when you get into issue campaigns and non-candidate money, you do want to know, who's sending this message. But it seems pretty clear there that she was sending the message, and I'm glad she was able to get that quickly corrected, and it sounds like it's in the clear now. Also, locally, we have had protests on Mizzou's campus about worker conditions, I guess.
Yeah, I guess I think it was the same day as the State of the University address by Dr. Moon Choi.
Hey, and you went to that. Tell
which
us
I went
about
to.
it.
Yeah, it was fantastic. The curator, Robin Winokur, asked me along as our guest, which was awkward because I was sitting in the second row in front of the dean of the law school, the dean of the veterinary school, all these really important people. But they have a lot of exciting things happening, and I learned a lot of things that Mizzou is doing that I was unaware of. So it was very positive. Applications to attend next year are already up 40% from last year.
Wow.
So they are getting a record number of applications to attend the University of Missouri, which is a great, great thing. In no small part, probably, I think, thanks to the football team's success.
Fair.
And Coach Drinkwitz was there. Everybody was there, basically. And it was a very positive event. But then following it, the university employees of the University of Missouri and MU Healthcare took to the campus demanding better working conditions. And so Luke Fennewald was an organizer with Labor Local 955 representing the university and MU Healthcare. And he said while he was watching that State of the University address, he didn't see much said about the university's most valuable assets, which are employees. He said, I noticed whenever I was watching, there was not a lot about the working conditions here at the university. It's a lot about building new buildings. It's a lot about investments. And while those things might be important and everything, I think the university is missing on investing in their employees. Well, aren't the employees going to get to work in the new buildings that they're improving and the new improvements? Won't that improve their working conditions? It's just an odd thing to say.
In 955 certainly has been critical of President Choi. At times, one of their other criticisms, Jennifer, is the mail facility, which is just down the street from the Eagle. They do not feel like he made the right decision to try to close that facility, but. They feel like they've been critical of some other areas. They want better salaries is what they're looking for.
It seemed like a lot of the complaints in the article was about they wanted raises. And I'm thinking you're going to work for a public entity like the state, basically, that has taxpayer dollars. If you really want to go someplace and hit marks and get, maybe you want to be in the private sector. I think that's something you kind of understand if you go to work for the state. Hey,
you'll get great benefits.
Yeah, great benefits. And I think you have
the highest salary.
Great work schedule. I mean, the folks that I know a lot of folks who want to work for the university because it's a great place. They say it's a great place to work, and the benefits are good, and you get some flexibility, and I think a lot of people would say that. So I think a lot of it has to do with the salaries, and I sympathize a little bit because certainly salaries are going less far than they were before, given high inflation, and that's tough. But it's also, I think from the university's perspective, they're experiencing increasing costs in not only for salaries but for everything else. So that money's got to come from somewhere, and and then every time they raise tuition, they get a ding, and when they go to the legislature and they're asking for more money, they get dinged. So it's kind of a catch-22 for the university.
Stephanie, you guys both bring up very good points, and I've heard the same thing from people that don't work there that would like to because of their benefits specifically, but 955, they have more political clout, in my opinion, than they have maybe in recent memory. I don't remember. They're definitely growing in clout, and I would say they have a lot of clout in the local community as well. They endorsed and supported Barbara Buffalo in that race for mayor, and I think their members made a big difference going door to door, specifically in the fourth ward. There's one other thing. Mike Murphy has reported this. Mike would have more details, but he has reported that a Democratic legislative candidate running in mid-Missouri by the name of Greg Bush has said, and I'm paraphrasing here, I don't have the article right in front of me, more or less has said that if he gets elected, if President Choi doesn't, meet what 955 is telling and really wanting, because he's interested in these wages, that he is saying that he will not vote for Mizzou funding. Now, will that happen? I don't know, but essentially Mike has reported that. So, again, they have they have allies in the legislature, and they definitely have allies potentially in the legislature. Greg Bush hasn't won yet, but we'll see what happens. I thought it was interesting. That story, again, it's one of those things, the state of the university, it did not get the media coverage from me and others that I thought it should have, because you had a huge murder trial going on. But again, it's just, I think it was a very interesting address. He really didn't say a whole lot new that we hadn't already reported. There were a few things that were new, but a lot, the building specifically, but a lot of the other things about the enrollment numbers and everything, we've already reported all that.
We just need that football team to keep on winning, right? So we're undefeated now. We're headed into, give us a quick preview of Saturday's game.
Saturday's game will be tough, Stephanie. It's going to be at College Station, home of the Texas A&M Fighting Aggies. It's called Kyle Field, home of the 12th man, 105 to 110,000 people. They have a band that's just incredible. The noise, it's so loud you cannot hear in that stadium. People have to take a trip there if they get an opportunity. Mizzou is 4-0. They are ranked number 9 right now. They moved up 2 slots after the Georgia
Are the Aggies ranked, Brian?
Yes, they are. I don't know. They were 24th Saturday. They won. I'm going to assume they're probably 20. I haven't seen their latest poll, but yes, they are ranked. So it's going to be a ranked matchup. But they have a fantastic quarterback, guys, named Marcel Reed. He is a freshman at A&M. He is really, really good. They struggled in the early game against Notre Dame. They found him, the freshman, and he is dynamite. So he'll remind you a little bit of the quarterback at Boston College, and Jen, you were there for that game, Castellanos. Not saying he's the same type. He's a freshman, obviously. This guy has it's going to be a tough game, and the biggest thing Eli is going to have to try to figure out, I'm sure they're working on it right now, is the noise. How do you prepare for that? Because you can't hear. You cannot hear in the stadium, much less on the field. So how does the offensive line hear the signals? I talked about that with Ben Fredrickson of the Post-Dispatch Friday, and my suggestion is maybe the offensive line holds hands. There's other opportunities, but that'll be a tough game.
Yeah, Kyle Field, Brian? It's like 100,000 capacity. It's one of the big ones.
Slightly, NASDAQ down 0.39%. Driving those losses was technology mainly. Up big was utilities and energy on Friday. As we look to today's market open, all of the indexes are in the red, headed into that vice presidential debate tomorrow. All right, so usually we do business. I'm going to count this as business, but I really just want to talk about rom-coms because there is a new rom-com out that is taking the internet by storm. And I think it's been a long debate about these TV streaming platforms, right? And Netflix started, and then they changed their pricing structure, and then there was Disney, and now there's Amazon, and there's whatever else, right? And they've all been competing. And I think the lesson here is as long as your content is good, you're going to stick around and do well. And Netflix is absolutely killing it. You're going to hear more about this. It started to blow up over the weekend. Hannah, do you know what I'm talking about? Or am I
don't think so.
Ahead of you? Oh, you are busy tonight. I want you to know you can get through all of the episodes in about 4 hours.
Oh,
5
I binged
hours.
that thing over the weekend.
Oh, you did? Oh, good. Okay, I'm glad Jen's here with me. Okay, so there's a new rom-com out. It's called Nobody Wants This. It's on Netflix.
With Kristen Bell.
But more importantly, Adam Brody, who was Seth on the OC, right? So for millennials, Kristen Bell was in Veronica Mars. Adam Brody starred in the OC. He's even better looking and more hunky now. She's like a podcast host.
What's the OC?
She was
Hannah.
I'm sorry.
She was in Frozen and stuff. She can sing. Isn't she the one that?
Yeah, I know Kristen Bell, but
and Kristen Bell was the Gossip Girl voice.
Yeah,
as well. Anyway, they've known each other for a very long time. I guess she executive produced this show. It's quick. It's like, 30-minute episodes?
10 of them.
10 of them. I think...
I hated the end.
Yeah, I feel like that's probably... But the
Did
first...
you like the end?
No, but the first couple episodes are so good. I'm
Horrible.
sure it's
the trailer was pretty cool. It's like a rabbi and a...
Yes.
Sex podcaster or
yes,
something like that.
So
Isn't that it?
she is a podcaster, and she podcasts mainly about, with her sister about sex, and he is a rabbi. She's confused at first and doesn't realize he's the rabbi, and they kind of have this meet cute, and it's very romantic. And I think everyone, for the history of time, have said The Notebook is, the best on-screen kiss of all time. Is that your read, Hannah?
I mean, yeah. I'm not a big rom-com.
This one beats it. You have to watch. I think when we look back, this is going to be the on-air best kiss of all time. So if you love rom-coms, not on air, on screen. Sorry, on screen.
An on-air kiss.
Yeah, sorry, that's gross. On-screen kiss of all time. I think, but
it's radio. That would be terrible. You can't see anything.
You have to watch it though.
We're on Facebook. I mean,
you have to watch
YouTube.
This. It's good, and I think Netflix is doing it right in that they release all 10 episodes at once. You can binge it. You can become totally obsessed. You can share it with your friends, like I am now. Jen's already watched it. I'm telling you, take some time, watch this show. Tell me what you think. And for millennials, it just brings back all these characters that you know and love, and it's wonderful. Okay, moving on. We've got Gale Blomenkamp with talking about Missouri Task Force 1 up next.
Has America been fair to Donald Trump? The people always know what's going on. I don't think
99. So excited to hear about his travels and how that's going so far. But right now, we're going to hear about some other travels. Gale Blomenkamp with Boone County is here with us, but specifically to talk about Missouri Task Force 1. I believe they departed Columbia on Wednesday morning. And where are they now, Gale?
Good morning, Stephanie. Thanks for having me. So Missouri Task Force 1, both teams, we sent out two different teams on 2 different days, one on Wednesday and then another smaller package on Friday. And as of yesterday, both teams are now together working in McDowell County, North Carolina, which is around the town of Marion, North Carolina, just outside of Asheville.
Can you tell us what they take with them when they left Columbia?
So we take all of the equipment that's assigned to the task force, so over 100,000 pounds of equipment, which would include any equipment needed for any type of disaster that we could come across, whether it be large concrete collapsed buildings, whether it be water rescue. Obviously was an enhancement that we took on this deployment. We have hazmat capabilities. We have search and rescue cameras. We have seismic listening devices. All of those tools that we could use or be needed in a natural or man-made disaster, we take with us on these deployments. So the crews have their tools. They have the people. They have the skill and abilities to use them.
Gale, what are you hearing from team leaders? What exactly are they tasked with, and what are they seeing on the ground?
So yesterday, the teams were tasked with a wide area search mission in the Pisgah National Forest, which is a pretty remote area. Very difficult to access. They were out doing wide area search and rescue, trying to locate any victims or anybody that may have been cut off from the storm damage, and then doing damage assessments of the area so they can report back to the local jurisdictions. And it's a pretty rough terrain. It's pretty hard to access and get into. I would tell you the 45-member team that was originally staged in Georgia, they got called to a collapsed structure on Friday evening, and they were able to make their way as a quick response unit about 2 hours from where they were at in Georgia, in Gainesville, Georgia, and they were able to cut their way into a residence that had been collapsed by trees, fallen trees. Unfortunately, the gentleman that was trapped inside that house had deceased prior to our arrival, but crews remained on the scene until 4 o'clock in the morning, assisting the local jurisdiction with extraction of that individual and getting that person to the coroner's office.
Again, Gale Blomenkamp is our guest. He's a Boone County Fire District Assistant Chief, and he is talking about Missouri Task Force 1. He's live here at 839 News Radio 950 KWS and also 93.9 The Eagle. Gale, you and I talked on the phone yesterday evening. I want to make sure we have the latest numbers. So is it still 62 Missouri Task Force 1 members in Asheville right now?
So we have, we have 62 members in North Carolina.
In North Carolina?
Yep, 61 for sure in that Asheville area.
Gotcha.
Not sure where the IST member is that's down there, but he's in North Carolina as well. And then we have 3 others in Orlando, Florida as part of the incident support team there.
Gotcha. And I know, just a quick follow-up on I'm seeing so much news coverage nationally about Asheville, North Carolina. The NWS office said it's the worst event that they have ever seen. I mean, I'm paraphrasing. That's essentially what was said. I know your crews have 100,000 pounds of equipment. Do they have enough equipment for what they're dealing with right now?
They do. They have plenty of equipment to deal with what they're dealing with. They have some issues with fuel. Obviously, that's been reported all over the national news as well. But our crews were able to take a lot of fuel in with them when that 45-member team moved from Georgia into North Carolina. So they are self-sufficient for the most part. They have food. They have water. They have all the needs that they have is what they take with them. There's no power in the area, but we have generators. We can set up areas where we can sleep and work, and we have power and satellite phones and that kind of thing. So our crews have all of those necessities to go in there and function and be able to communicate out to FEMA and to that incident support team.
Great, thank you.
Gale, talk to us maybe a little bit about the history of Task Force 1, because I think so many people, listeners and all, hear about it and say, oh, that's Task Force 1. Well, it's got quite the storied history going all the way back to 9/11, doesn't it?
Yeah, so in the mid-'90s is when this program actually became a dream of the Boone County Fire District. FEMA was looking to add 2 more teams to the national model. There were 25 teams at the time. And so they put out a request, a call for papers, and Boone County applied and put in for that. And it was a competitive process here in the central part of the United States where we were selected as the 26th team, and Ohio was the 27th team, I believe. And then that was in 1998. And then our first deployment was 9/11 in New York City, and that was quite the first deployment. But we've been very active team since then. We've gone all over the country, and most notably, we are in those pretty close proximity to the Gulf Coast. So we see a lot of hurricane activity. We see a lot of flooding issues. Recently being in the Kentucky floods is what they kind of compared this to, is what we were seeing a few years ago in Kentucky as well.
We had played some audio from President Biden earlier where he was asked, is there anything else the federal government can do? And he basically said, no, we don't have any more resources. Can you talk to us a little bit about the coordination from the feds and with the other task forces, what that looks like, and how does that go?
Yeah, so the task forces, there's 28 federal teams in the system, and FEMA coordinates all of those. We all are part of FEMA. So when that emergency happens, it starts local and ends local. So a local agency, a local county needs to request assistance from their state. The state then reaches out to FEMA or to the federal government for assistance. And that's how Missouri Task Force 1 gets sent to these locations. We just don't, on a whim, say, hey, we're going to go down to the Gulf Coast and spend a couple of days here and see if we can gather some work. It all starts local and ends local. So when those local governments reach out, that goes to FEMA. There's 28 FEMA teams in the country, and I believe if they're all not deployed at some capacity or another, I would be very surprised. I know there's teams from California even coming out this direction. So there's activity, there's resources out there. This is such a large area, and when you're talking about trying to provide resources to every area that needs it, it's very difficult. So I know the federal government's doing the best they can. I know Missouri Task Force 1's obviously working hard every day and doing what we can do. And the crews are doing well, and the task force leader says we'll be here till the work is done.
Well, on that front, I know now that they're on the ground, do you have any additional details about how long they might be deployed into North Carolina?
I don't have any specifics. However, I would anticipate if there is still the need after 14 days, I would see the potential to rotate crews and not bring all that equipment home. Just fly out another 45 or whatever team is needed, and then bring those other members back. Because 2 weeks of this and living in primitive conditions, the stress, the lack of sleep, all of those things takes a toll on the members that are out there. But it also takes a big toll on the family and the employers. So it's very difficult to have people out there for longer than 2 weeks. It becomes somewhat dangerous, if you say so.
Wow. Well, we appreciate all the work that you are doing. Certainly for those of us here in mid-Missouri watching the devastation in North Carolina, it's kind of nice to see folks from right here in mid-Missouri lending a hand to those who are certainly in a time of need. So thanks for the update this morning, and thanks for all of your work.
You're welcome, and you guys, we appreciate your time and keep everybody in your thoughts and prayers.
Thank you, Gale. Appreciate that. And I'll have that.
Right,
thank you, Gale. I'll have the interview with Gale posted after 9 o'clock. There's one thing, Stephanie, I want to direct everyone's attention to, and it's on KWS.com. I posted it, and also 93.9theeagle.com after I talked to Gale. But there's a photo I used courtesy of Gale, and he referenced it in the interview we just had with him. But they were called to a home in Georgia over the weekend, and just a huge tree, huge. You could barely see the house, fell on a guy's house in Georgia, very remote area, Lincoln County. And the firefighters from Boone County Task Force 1, the men and women there, had to actually use chainsaws to even get into the house. They worked forever, it seemed like, to get in there, and they got in there, and the man had died. He had died from injuries after this tree fell on them. So, You heard it. You heard what he said there, and he talks about the importance and obviously it sounds like they'll probably be there longer than 2 weeks, and the importance of rotating. It is stressful. It is dangerous. They're dealing with, in some cases in Florida, they were potentially dealing with alligators and poisonous snakes. Don't know about North Carolina, but this is just horrific. This is just a horrible situation they're in right now, and I'm a little concerned about the fact that they're low on fuel, but it sounds like they were able to bring fuel with them. But we learned a lot of new stuff in that interview. That's brand new information.
Yeah, I mean, it's been hard to watch social media. I mean, watching whole houses float down waterways, and then roads being completely washed out, and a lot of people expressing concern about students in the area, young people in the area, people on vacation who are unfamiliar with the area. And then I think a lot of the deaths we are learning have been attributed to the falling of the trees. But I assume with all of the water issues that those numbers are going to tick up as we get additional rescue crews down there.
Yeah, it is. I was in North Carolina in 2011 for an event, and I believe I probably drove through that town. I was with a friend. I don't know if it was Asheville, but it was very close to that area. And it's a lot, as I recall, there's a lot of tourists in that area. If I'm thinking,
it's a huge tourist area.
Yeah.
Just from the minute you get out of Knoxville and you head to Pigeon Forge and Sevierville and Dollywood and all that general neck of the woods.
Yeah, and tourists, and also I remember seeing people white rafting down in that area. It's awful, and it's just I know the governor's requested help and the president signed off on it, but people are being cut off from communications. But just keep all them in your prayers.
Yeah, and it certainly, I mean, a lot of tourist areas. The other one I noticed online was Augusta National.
Yeah.
Brian, you're a big golfer, but they were, I think their head was out saying we're going to do everything we can, but it looks like that golf course sustained a lot of damage as well.
That's just and so much tradition there, I wasn't aware of that, but. That's a private club, but their members may have to pay for damage, maybe insurance. I just don't know exactly what that's going to be, but that whole area is just awful. It's just an awful situation.
Yeah, and I've already seen the calls on Twitter that North Carolina, where Asheville's not even close to the coast. This is what climate change does, and so I'm sure we'll be seeing that as we move forward. But certainly, everyone in Hurricane Helene's path are in our thoughts and prayers. Up next, we're going to do leftovers. Jen, you've got some Netflix updates, a couple of other updates for us.
Yeah, big
fact that this is the best rom-com you have seen or will see in this decade. But yeah, we should be apparently canceling Netflix. So
I enjoy it too much to cancel it because of one co-founder. I mean, a lot of people own stock in that company, so.
And Jen, you said there were some big Missouri names in the Wall Street Journal just this
I'm reading
weekend.
the Wall Street Journal. Trump plans massive shakeup of Justice Department.
Thank goodness.
Critics are alarmed by his threats of retribution.
Give me a break.
Scrolling down into this article, and he's repeatedly signaled that he wants to clean house. Among those under consideration to lead the department in a second Trump administration are John Ratcliffe, who served under Trump as Director of National Intelligence, Senator Eric Schmidt of Missouri, a former state attorney general, and Senator Mike Lee of Utah, according to people familiar with discussions. These talks have included informal musings by Trump, who has mentioned Arkansas Senator Tom Cotton. Get ready for this next one. Trump is also fond of some state attorneys general, including Andrew Bailey of Missouri and Chris Kobach of Kansas, who have filed lawsuits challenging Biden administration policies. Advocates of Mark Paoletta, former general counsel of Trump's Office of Management and Budget, have personally pitched him to Trump. So it sounds like two Missouri people, our AG and our senator, are high up on this short list for United States Attorney General, which kind of concerns me because Trump went through a couple of AGs last time. And so what happens to you, Eric Schmidt or Andrew Bailey, if you take this job and then Trump gets mad at you and they fires you?
If he offers it to you, you can't not take it, right?
That's true. So then if that were to happen, can you imagine the shakeup once again in Missouri politics? Like Kehoe would get to appoint an AG or a U.S. senator?
It's been a wild ride.
Yeah.
In the last several years in Missouri, I think it would definitely open the door for new.
Yeah, he could bump up. Schmidt's candidate. He could make Bailey senator, and then because to pick AG. How about Kurt Schaefer? Let's put that out there right now.
It could potentially open up 2 spots. You're right, Jennifer. And what does it mean for Missouri to have someone from our state at that high level? I think it's huge.
It is huge. It really adds to our prominence. I mean, Ashcroft was way back when, and we still talk about that, don't we?
We certainly do. And I think, it also speaks to the quality of our candidates that they're getting this national recognition. I mean, I think Senator Schmidt's been doing a fabulous job. He's certainly been cozying up to Trump more.
And J.D. Vance, they've been out on the campaign trail together. I think they're buddies.
And I think, the one thing that really solidified it for me was, I think the night that we were getting the announcement of the VP pick, Senator Schmidt was on the bus, and he's got his camera out and he's videoing everyone who's on the VP list. And I'm thinking, but why are you on this bus, Senator Schmidt? What's your role there? Because you're technically not on the VP list, but you're apparently high enough up that you're on the bus with everyone who is.
And he's done at Mar-a-Lago a bunch too.
Yeah, didn't we hear some stories that he was part of the team that was helping to coach Donald Trump ahead of the first debate?
He was, yeah.
I bet he's also on the J.D. Vance team, don't you think? I would think with as close of friends they are.
Apparently they've got Buttigieg pretending to be J.D. Vance to prepare Tim Walz.
Really?
I'm excited for that debate, but I'm a political nerd. I know a lot of people don't care about the VP debate, but I'm looking forward to it tomorrow.
Anything you're going to be watching for in particular?
Basically, whether Vance can stomp on Walz like I think that he